I love you, Lord, and I lift my voice to worship you, O my soul. Rejoice, take joy, my King, in what you hear. Let it be a sweet, sweet sound in your ear. Father in heaven, as we begin our class this afternoon, this evening, be with us. Direct us to the fulfilling of your purpose. Open our hearts, open our minds, that we may discern where we ought to be, what we ought to do, how we ought to live, that every day of our lives you may move us forward in your beloved kingdom. Open up our hearts and minds to true wisdom, the wisdom that flows from you, O God, the wisdom that calls us day by day to surrender our lives willingly to you, to be guided, guarded, and protected by you at every turn and step along the way. But more importantly, how we relate to the rest of the world around us, and especially how we carry ourselves as your children in this world. Come now and be with us this evening, and direct us to the fulfilling of your purpose, that in all things, Jesus, your will be done, from this day forth and forevermore. Amen. Before I begin, I think I need to make some things clear, because on, I believe, Sunday evening, Minky, you asked me some questions. I believe it's you who asked me about what's happening in terms of the Anglican Communion. And we dealt with it today at Synod. That was the first order of business of the day. So let me say to you all, get your pen and paper out so you're able to write down some key things that I want you to go and look for. Last week, Thursday, the 16th of October, there is a group of Anglicans, and this group has been growing steadily. They are called GAFON, G-A-F-O-N. They began the Global Anglican Fellowship of Prayer in Jerusalem in 2008. And what they have been doing is going around the world, gathering primates, bishops, dioceses, so that they can build up a huge following. Okay? They estimate that with their following, they have about half of the world's Anglicans behind them. Okay? And I need to say to you all that this was the conservative wing that was the backlash against those who decided that they were going to go ahead and, first of all, ordain homosexual clergy, bless same-sex marriages. They were also lashing back against those who wanted to push euthanasia. And in case you all never heard that word before, what it is, it's assisted suicide. You allow people to kill themselves because they don't want to face the pain and the difficulty and the tragedy and the cost of having to prolong their suffering. Okay? And what happened is that this group decided that The church needed to repent, and it needed to go back to a biblical base. And more importantly, they were going to force the church to go down that particular route. This was one of the strong movements within the church. Remember I said it's 2008. Bishop Gomez, along with, basically tried with the Africans, Akinola from Nigeria, who's the Archbishop and Primate of Nigeria. They tried their best to bring things back in line so that Anglicans could understand, even though we have a diversity of beliefs, it doesn't mean that we accept it in every province around the world. Every province is autonomous. In other words, whatever happens in England does not impact us here in the Bahamas. Okay? Let's get that straight. Just because people believe that's Mother Church England, which unfortunately some Bahamian people pick up, that's nonsense. We do not follow Mother Church England. It's the Church of the West Indies that we follow. We are a province that stands alone by itself, setting its standards, its ethics, all the rest of it, based upon what we have received from the past. As far as this province is concerned, we have received Anglican with what I call the three-legged stool, or the three-wheel tricycle. Okay? Where you have scripture, the big wheel in the front that is pulling everything along, and then tradition, and by tradition I'm talking about smells and bells and incense and the rest of it. That's not tradition. Tradition has to do with doctrine. It has to do with the Nicene Creed, the Apostles' Creed, the Athanasian Creed, the 39 Articles. It has to deal with what we believe, what is very important in terms of our faith and understanding where we're coming from. And the third wheel is the wheel of reason. In other words, your faith must make sense. Okay? And what GAFCON has been doing is pushing people to say, if it ain't from the Bible, that's it. All right? And I started off my statement by saying to you all that on Thursday, they issued a letter that literally rocked the entire Anglican world and has caused a major split in the Anglican Church. Okay? Most of the churches in GAFCON come out of, and make sure you list them, they come out of Africa, they come out of Asia, South Asia, they come out of South America, good afternoon. They have some dioceses and congregations in North America. In North America, I mean both the United States and in Canada. But because the bulk of Anglicans are in Africa, they are trying to exert their influence over the church in Africa. Yes? Somebody will ask something? No. The fastest growing part of the Anglican communion is in Africa. Okay? Take, for instance, in the Church of Nigeria, in 2002, remember when I went to Kenya? They had only 60 dioceses formed in Nigeria. Now they have 160 dioceses that are being formed. That's how big and how rapid the church has grown and developed. Okay? It's true of Kenya, it's true of Ghana, it's true of quite a number of the states in Africa. In the Congo, you have a whole thriving Anglican communion that was developing. And they're now, basically, if you go to the internet, I guess what I need to do is I need to give you all the article as it appears as a video, which will help you all greatly, so you don't have to be writing down so much. I'll make sure that I attach it to the next set of notes for next week so that you're able to read through it. You're able to see what they actually said in terms of what they decided upon they would. You have to join their group. You have to agree to the statement that they put forward in 2008. You have to make sure that you follow the Bible. You have to make sure that you reject the following things, which are what I call the pillars of Anglicanism. You need to reject the office of the Archbishop of Canterbury. So I didn't care if it was male or female, they reject the Archbishop of Canterbury, period. That's out of the picture. They reject what is known as the ACC, the Anglican Consultative Council, which is made up of bishops, priests, and lay people who set the policy for where the church is headed and where it's going. Anglican Consultative Council. That's from Anglicans from around the world who basically sit down and try to work out what is happening in terms of Anglicanism across the world and come up with a basic statement of where the church should be headed. Okay? The third thing that they reject is what we call the primates who are not in communion with them. So in other words, if you're not a primate who is in GAFCON, out you go. And the primates are what we would call the head archbishop of a particular region or state. Okay? And I need you to understand that archbishops stand alone. There are no popes in the Anglican Church. We do not operate like the Roman Catholics, where there is a magisterium, and then there is a whole set of other councils and cardinals and all the rest of them, and then there's a little pope at the top who makes all the decisions, whose word is final. Okay? And comes from God, as far as they're concerned. All right? And what has happened is that they have now decided that we've rejected the See of Canterbury, which used to be the central place. They've rejected the ACC, the Anglican Consultative Council. They've rejected the primates of the world. In other words, the other archbishops who ain't got no say. Nothing at all. And the last thing that they reject is something that you all will know, and that is the Lambeth Conference and whatever decisions are decided at that particular point. So they've rejected those four things. They've rejected whoever at the office of the Archbishop of Canterbury. They've rejected the ACC. They have rejected the primates meeting, okay? And they have also rejected the Lambeth Conference, which meets every 10 years. They're coming with their own rule, their own way of moving forward. Okay? Now, when the bishop gives us a copy of the statement, if he gives it to us in good time, what I will do is I will attach that to your notes next week, so you don't have to be asking me what happened. Because this morning, what the bishop did in his second part of his charge is he started off by describing what I just finished describing for you. Okay? And there were certain things that he pointed out. All the stuff that I just finished talking about, that's a part of what he gave. And he also went on and he talked about the fact that every province is autonomous. In other words, no province can force us in the Caribbean to follow any strange doctrine or teaching. Okay? We have Anglicanism that is being built on scripture, tradition with a capital T, and reasoning. And those become the pillars upon which we build in terms of our Anglican faith. All right? If you want to, I wrote an article some years back for the Anglican Church Women for their conference where I talked about the Anglican ethos, what makes us Anglicans. It's about 16 pages in terms of a little small booklet like a bulletin. And there are some people who have it, but I'd be more than happy to attach that as well, so you have that as well, so you know what we believe and what we accept. Sorry?
That is the book you wrote,
The yellow book?
Yeah.
No. This is far more than what's in the yellow book. Yellow book is only limited stuff. What I've written there is become standard because it's being used in all parts of the church in the West Indies, all over the place. All right? What Bishop said this morning is that we need to recognize that, God rest his soul, Archbishop Gomez fought to try and keep the Anglican communion together. And he said that as far as he is concerned, whatever we believed in, including what we called Lambeth, you need to write this down, the Lambeth Resolution 110. You can actually go into your computer in your search and type it in, Lambeth Resolution 110, which rejects the same-sex marriages, blessings of same-sex marriages, all the other issues that we just finished raising with you all. You can go in and check on it. He also made it clear that he has no intentions of joining GAFCON. So that's out of the question altogether. We remain a part of the Anglican communion around the world, which still builds on those other four pillars which have been rejected. Okay? He made clear to us that there are how we deal with differences in Anglicanism is that we may decide to distance ourselves for a while, but we will come back and we will debate whatever the issues are until we can get a clear understanding of what it takes for us to be able to walk together in unity. And after we finished rowing and carrying on, he said, we basically go back to the communion table and break bread and have Holy Communion together. So we understand and let God know that we may differ in terms of the way we think, but at the end of the day, nothing to divide us in any way whatsoever. And he said that it would be a shame to be a part of the legacy of Archbishop Gomez for us in the Caribbean. He can't make that decision as yet. But it would be a sad day if the Caribbean decide to follow these other people off and do whatever they want to do at the end of the day. In short, he said that as long as he's bishop, he will maintain the same standards, the same ethics, the same morals that we have always accepted as traditional in terms of our diocese, and we do not intend to be swayed by the people in North America, and certainly not by the people in Africa. We clear on that now? Okay? And so when the statement comes out, you all will have at least a head start, knowing fully well that we dealt with it today. Yes, ma'am?
Have we ever been required to submit assessments to the people in Canterbury?
No.
Okay, so we only submit assessments to our diocese.
To our diocese. That's the way that we raise money in our diocese. Okay? There are other dioceses where the parishes may pay a minimal fee to the diocesan office, and the parishes themselves look after every other bill. there's a totally different setup in each diocese and in each province. Let me give you a typical example. In North America, they're looking for clergy, they're looking for priests. Their rector just is about to retire, getting ready to retire. So they establish what is known as a search committee. That search committee jumps on planes and they go around the United States or in the Caribbean in order to see if they could find a suitable person to become their rector. Okay? And I'm laughing for good reason, because the sad part about this, we had some people from America who came to the Healing Conference. And they also came to worship with us on Sunday. And they cracked a joke as they were leaving St. Matthew's. They said, we're going to send the search committee here to you. And I said, don't waste your time. Unless the Lord tell me to move, that's the only time I move. Okay? All right? And when he doesn't, I always tell people, you could always see the mess that happens when I do the part. I know that God's hand has to be in it for us to be able to make progress and move forward. But what happens is that they then call the rector in, they invite him in, he does a couple of services, he preaches to them, they sit down with the rest of the vestry, they ask him a whole stream of questions on his stance on certain issues, and then they let him leave, and then they decide that they'll gather together and vote. And then they determine the terms of payment, of stipend, of everything else with regard to that priest by themselves, without reference to the diocese or the bishop.
Just like that?
They don't ask for Bishop White's permission.
No, not if they're in the States. I talk about the States.
If they want a Bahamian, they don't ask for permission.
For Bahamians, on the other hand, this is the way it's supposed to be done. And please put that word "supposed" in big capital letters. Okay, this is what's supposed to take place. The bishop, when there is a vacancy, is supposed to come to the parish and present the parish with at least 3 names. Okay? The vestry is asked to make sure that they produce a profile before the bishop presents those names so that they're able to say these are the needs of the parish. Okay? Let's hypothetically say St. Matthew's decide we want an entertainer. We want a happy-go-lucky person who's going to just keep us laughing and roll us in and roll us back out, all smiles and laughter. Okay? All right? He presents 3 names, and then they choose the happy-go-lucky winner. And they go back to the bishop and said, well, Bishop, we went through the names of the list. We figured this person will keep us happy. There's a problem there, because it's not about our happiness. It's about the gospel message. It's about Jesus Christ. It's about somebody who's going to equip us for the work and the ministry that God is calling us to carry out at this particular phase in terms of our lives. It's somebody who's going to propel us forward in terms of what needs to take place. And the reason why I use the word suppose is that most people in recent times, they show up and they're told, I only got 1 name. And people look at each other and say, well, I thought you would come with more than 1 name. And the sad part about it is that they got to make a choice. Either they take the name or they go without a rector for a while. All right? And so what happens is that you need to be able to know the background of your clergy to be, you need to know, and let me say this to you all, if you ever get into the spot where you have to sit on the vestry and make choices, always remember a basic rule. I always tell people, if you know the needs of the parish, then you need to make sure that the gifts of the person match the needs. In other words, it don't make sense you getting what I call a misfit. And I'm not calling the priest a misfit. I'm talking about a mismatch. Okay? Otherwise, this is what you can get. Constant butting of heads. Because people want one thing, the other person wants something else, and they ain't seeing eye to eye on absolutely nothing. But when they come together, the needs matching the gifts, and they match up, then they're able to make progress and move forward. Okay? And so it's a prayerful process. You got to make sure that you get down in prayer, that you ask for God's guidance, that you say, excuse me, this is going a little too fast. We need to pray about this. We need to ask for God's guidance so that we may be directed in the path that we're supposed to go. Okay? And that's what takes place in terms of our own diocese. Okay? In Africa, I got the shock of my life when I went to a conference for the Canon Missioners in 2002, and then I understood the methods that they used to choose their bishops. And I was stunned. In one particular place, they let a child choose who's going to become bishop. A child, yeah, a child should lead them. Okay? And I said to them, that could be very dangerous, because suppose the people who are there, they know who got the most candy in their pocket. So they're picking the person not because they believe that person is rightfully supposed to be the bishop of the diocese. They're looking for the candy. Okay? Next situation. They did it by picking straws. Whoever had the longest straw became the bishop. Okay? Very well. Oh, God have mercy me. You're in trouble. All right? And our biblical tradition is filled of things that should make you laugh. Don't forget how they chose Matthias. They put the two names on two stones and they put them in a jar and shook the jar up. I'm pointing at Paradise Island. What do you get over Paradise Island? They take the jar and they shake up the dice, and then what do they do? That's what casting lots was. When they put all the sailors' names in the cup and they shook it up and they rolled the cup and Jonah's name came out, they were casting lots. So the mere fact that Jonah's name come out on whatever it was, whether it was a little piece of wood or something, Jonah's the problem. You need to deal with him. Okay? And then worst of all, I need to remind you all that the high priest had in his breastplate the urn and the thurm. Those were the sacred stones. So if they couldn't decide your case, and you had a capital case, a capital punishment, you get executed, the high priest took the stones out and put it in a jar. Lord, show us if this person is innocent or guilty. Oh, God have mercy. There was no grounds for appeal. And whatever stone came out first. Now, I might as well tell you, at that point you'd probably be screaming and hollering, get me out of this, Lord. Okay? Because I'm sure when them stones heavier than the next one, and then that light will come out first. Okay? Shima, you've been holding on that microphone desperately to put a question in. So put your question in and then we start for the night.
Okay, no, I was saying, I thought that's what she was meaning, but I thought that she meant that one of those persons from the United States come here looking for a priest, do they still have to go to Bishop Boyd and other for Bishop Boyd to Louisiana? Or not priest?
No. What would happen is very simple and very straightforward. They would come, they would issue me an invitation to come across to their church. I'll go do some services for them, and then I come back here. The vestry in the United States would then make up their mind whether they wanted to have a Bahamian as a priest. They then have to approach immigration. And the way things going now in the United States, you may get arrested and deported before you even get to the door. They're gonna have to make sure that they have permission to bring you there. So they have to go through immigration. Meanwhile, they will tell you your name is being accepted, you are being selected. Please make sure that you get from your bishop a letter dimissary. Write it down somewhere so you remember some of these Anglican terms.
A letter what?
Dimissary. The letter dimissary is given by the bishop in order to release somebody from ministry in his diocese so that they can carry that letter to the next diocese that he or she goes to. And that letter will basically be a summary of the person's ministry, of what are some of the things they accomplished, and if there are any things that they were rebuked for or they got disciplined for, that letter will also bear that as well. So that person carries the letter dimissary, gives it to the vestry, which then passes it on to the bishop in the United States, who basically goes through the paperwork and says, okay, y'all have everything in order. I can allow this person to come and join our diocese. Okay? Shima, does that answer your question? That puts it to a halt? Okay? And you gotta worry, Father Dines ain't going down that road. Okay? I ain't going to leave my shore homeland to go someplace to get deported. Okay? Pardon? Yeah, they send me all the way to Venezuela or even someplace in Africa. All right, everybody. Are we clear on what I'm saying to you? All right. And I hope that the people who are online have understood what I've said. I don't see there are any questions. No questions. All right. So again, I have some attachments, extra attachments to put to your emails. And what I will do is put all of that together for you so that that will help you to be able to make the right decisions. Tonight? Yes.
Are you going to tell the church not on Sunday?
If the bishop reduces the statement, I won't have to tell them. All we need to do is run off a pastoral note to the congregation so that they understand where we stand at the end of the day. But that's a good suggestion. Maybe I need to say that tomorrow. Bishop, can you please turn it into a pastoral letter so we can read it for the rest of the congregation? Okay? But I'll ask them tomorrow when we go to synod. All right, everybody, you're happy now? Somewhat. At least we know we ain't going either way. Okay? We ain't going contrary period. Tonight, I remind you that once again, we're going through the wisdom of Jesus ben Sirach, probably written in Egypt during the 2nd century BC. And basically, unlike the wisdom literature of the Old Testament period, which was used for the training of young men in the service of the royal court, the wisdom being presented to us in the wisdom of Jesus ben Sirach, or what is known as Ecclesiasticus, also known as Sirach, is there to help us to understand how life ought to function if we are functioning in the wisdom of God. And we've seen already that when persons, there are 3 types of people. What are they? The wise. And the wise, they sit down, they think things through, they make sure they operate under the fear of the Lord, because the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Okay? The second group of people are who? The foolish. And the foolish don't take God into account at all. They couldn't care less. They just do whatever they want to do. Deal under the table, round the table, over the top of the table. That's how big and bold they are in terms of how they operate. And the final group of people? The simple. And the simple are those who simply what? Go with the flow. They just go along the routine. This is what the rest of the people thinking. This is what they're operating. This is just exactly what we're going to do. And we've seen thus far as we've made our way through the material out of Wisdom of Jesus ben Sirach, or Ecclesiasticus, or Sirach, we've seen already how it impacts all areas of our lives. Not just our relationship with God, but how we deal with life and the people who surround us, and how we get on as individuals in terms of our own personal integrity, our uprightness, our righteousness. All of that is a part of the wisdom that we operate in. And tonight, we're going to continue discussing, unfortunately, I told you all there was more to come. But tonight, you're going to find out that there's a whole section in chapter 26 that deals with good wives and bad wives. I didn't write it. Don't blame me for it. Okay, who's? Shanice, you have your documents?
The wisdom of Ben Sirach, chapter 26, Ecclesiasticus, chapter 26. Happy is the husband of a good wife. The number of his days will be doubled. A loyal wife brings joy to her husband, and he will complete his years in peace. A good wife is a great blessing. She will be granted among the blessings of man who fears the Lord. Whether rich or poor, his heart is content, and at all times his face is cheerful. Of 3 things my heart is frightened, and of the 4th I am in great fear. Slander in the city, the gathering of a mob, and false accusation. All these are worse than death. But it is heartache and sorrow when a wife is jealous of a rival, and the tongue lashing makes it known to all. A bad wife is a chafing yoke. Taking hold of her is like grasping a scorpion. A drunken wife arouses anger. She cannot hide her shame. The haughty stare betrays an unchaste wife. Her eyelids give her away. Keep strict watch over a strong-haired daughter, or else when he finds liberty, she will make use of it. Be on guard against her imprudent eye, and do not be surprised if she sins against you. As a thirsty traveler opens his mouth, and drink from any water near him. So she would sit in front of every tent peg and open her quiver to the arrows. A wife charms the likes of her husband, and her skill puts flesh on his bones. A silent wife is a gift from the Lord, and nothing is so precious as her self-discipline. A modest wife adds charm to charm, and no scales can weigh the value of her chastity. Like the sun rising in the heights of the Lord, so is the beauty of a good wife in her well-ordered home. Like a shining lamp on the holy lampstand, so is a beautiful face on a stately figure. Like golden pillars on silver bases, so are shapely legs and steadfast feet. My child, keep sound the bloom of your youth, and do not give your strength to strangers. Seek a fertile field within the whole plain, and sow it with your own seed, trusting in your fine stock, so your offspring will prosper, and having confidence in their good descent will grow great. A prostitute is regarded as spittle, and a married woman as a tower of death to her lovers. A godless wife is given as a portion to a lawless man, and a pious wife is given to a man who fears the Lord. A shameless woman constantly acts disgracefully, but a modest daughter will even be embarrassed before her husband. A strong-head wife is regarded as a doss, but one who has a sense of shame will fear the Lord. A wife honoring her husband will say wise to all, but if she dishonors him in her pride, she will be known to all as ungodly. Happy is the husband of a good wife, for the number of his years will be doubled. A loud and garrulous wife is like a trumpet sounding the charge, and every man like this lives in the anarchy of war. At two things my heart is grieved, and because of a third anger comes over me, a warrior in want through poverty, intelligent men who are treated contemptuously, and a man who turns back from righteousness to sin. The Lord will prepare him for the sword. A merchant can hardly keep from going wrong, nor is a tradesman innocent of sin. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Yes.
And I think the time to remind us, to remind me the wife.
That's all right.
Jesus Ben Sirach. Okay. Don't get him confused with our Jesus in the New Testament. Okay? Jesus Ben Sirach. Ben means son of Sirach. And it's obvious that at some point the author probably was a teacher, okay? Or somebody who had some sort of religious background in terms of being able to put together what needs to happen. Don't forget that most of the writings in our biblical tradition would have been written by priests or by clergy because they were the ones who could read and write and do whatever else needed to be done. And because of their vast display of knowledge, remember, Isaiah is a priest. Ezekiel is a priest. Jeremiah obviously had priestly roots. Okay? You would go down the whole list and then you begin to recognize. Zephaniah was probably in that same boat. You need to recognize the fact that in many cases, it is the ones who were educated that God used to produce the kind of literature that was necessary to try and bring Israel back to where it was supposed to be. Okay? All we know is that the writer himself found it necessary to make sure that he took from out of the wisdom of the world and the wisdom of God, and he meshed the two together so that people could understand what life ought to be like by using both the language of his Old Testament and language that he picked up from the wisdom that was in the world that was around him. And that's why some of the concepts that you see coming out of chapter 26 would have been some imagery that would have been assumed into this whole process. But let me say this to you all. My biggest problem, as I see it, is this, that when we give sermons, addresses, charges, there has to be some theological grounding from our faith that undergirds everything else that we have to say. And I tell people it is important for you to make sure that you clarify the theological undergirding. Otherwise, you're trying to undergird it, but you ain't making a connection, so all people see is the secular stuff. You get the picture? And that could be disastrous because you could spend time entertaining a congregation without them ever moving further on in terms of their walk and their journey. And I think what the author is trying to do in a very subtle way is that he's taking the imagery of not just the Old Testament, but also of the world that's around him. And there are two spots when you all laugh because you all knew the imagery that he was trying to get across to you all. Okay? The one that most people in this congregation would not have picked on was to recognize the fact that when he talks about the woman and her legs, you need to go back to Isaiah chapter 6. And I hope you write it down somewhere so you don't forget it. Where the angels are covering themselves while they stand in the presence of God. With two wings, they covered their face. With two, they covered their body. And with two, they covered their legs. You see where my hands are? In other words, the two that's covering their legs is covering their what? Don't say the word out loud. Their private parts. Okay? So when he uses the term legs, you also need to go back and look at Genesis so you could see the same imagery being presented. When it came time for swearing of oaths, when Jacob is about to die, he calls them in and they are to stick their hands under his leg. I'm trying to remember, I think it's chapter 48. You get the picture? Now keep your hands to yourself, everybody. You're not making any oaths in here.
Reading this, it really makes me feel like you get to win by one gal.
You get what?
You get to win by one gal.
The sad part about it is that he's trying to draw a contrast between having a good wife, and you see people look at it carefully. The first 4 verses deal with a good wife. It says, whether you're rich or poor, your heart will be content if you got a good wife. Okay? All right? All right?
Things looking good.
Pardon?
Sound like things looking good for him in this relationship.
Well, in some of the relationships he saw going on around him, probably some taste of what he had from some other persons, because if you look at verse 5, go right straight down, past verse 12, he spends almost what I call a third of that passage literally talking about the problems of having a bad wife. He says, you know, there's some things that really rock society. Slander in the city, the gathering of a mob, false accusation, but Jesus help you get a jealous woman. By her? Yes. Huh?
If she's the wife of her husband,
yes.
She should be jealous.
If she is a good wife and knows that she's being a good wife, She ain't got to worry because she's looking after business. She's looking after business. Now, if somebody wants to step in to be a rival, if somebody wants to step in to be a rival, if somebody wants to step in to be a rival, you need to understand something. Jewish society, you know, the old people used to say, hog know where to rub their tail. Okay? And they know better to fool with some people because they can get lashed for it. Okay? And so when you look at the passage, okay, there's some people who just contemptuous. They want to be the rival. They want to get in there to cause trouble. I'll never forget, a week after we were married, we went to an engagement party. And there was a young lady from high school that I knew. And she came not realizing that we were married and tried to squeeze herself in between.
Are you sure she didn't realize?
Well, I don't know. I can tell you this much. I had to say to her, hey, that's my wife. In other words, I'm taken. Okay? You let him know front. And any man who knows that he is married needs to make sure that he declares who he is, what the other person is, and what's supposed to happen. Okay? I'm married. You make sure you declare your status. Okay? You do not stand up there and flirt and smile and grin. Okay? And then you deserve to get kicked in your head. All right? Where's the microphone? Go ahead, Cheryl. Ask your question. Yes.
At the one time, I want to read the text as attributing great importance to a woman, even although, you know, they were considered a little better.
Hold the microphone a little closer to you.
A little better than property at that time. Because the husband's happiness is so much linked to the kind of wife that he has. I believe that the text is an endorsement of the importance of women. I don't know.
And let me say to you, let me say this to you. I always tell people, if you know and love and respect a good woman, and she does the same for you, it is a mutual respecting and uplifting for both of you in terms of the relationship. See, this is one of the reasons why I have problems when people go and flip over the page to the New Testament and go to Ephesians chapter 5, and it says, see right there, wives, be submissive to your husbands. And I tell them, why are you doing damage to the text? Why you don't read a couple of verses ahead of that, so you could understand what the whole passage says in terms of what it says. It says, husbands and wives, you be mutually submissive to each other. Then he goes on to talk about the duty of the wife. And not only that, the duty of the husband is described after that. Husbands, treat your wives as though they were, that's like the church, that just as Christ gave his life for the church in order to ransom the church, so you ought to be willing and ready to lay down your life for your wife. You understand? So there's mutual respect and submission that takes place. The sad part about it is we get into the stage in Bahamian society where we let these people from North America quote the scriptures and make us twist our mind, oh, you're supposed to beat into submission. And it's sad. And I'm sure in courts you see it all the time. Okay? I had to write an article on on the question of marital rape for a student last night after I came back from the service at the cathedral. So I sat down quickly and wrote up about 2 pages of notes for the person so that they could go to class and be content and happy. But you need to recognize the fact that you just can't read a surface reading of some quote and leave it like that. There's some depth that is going on here that we need to recognize.
Someone said a woman has to be operating under grace canon in order not to be jealous, annoyed, grappled by a rival.
Yeah. And more importantly, if you know you're secure with your husband, what would you worry for? Okay? And I always tell people, one of the greatest things about marriage is this: it is a question of trust. You trust him, he trusts you. And I tell people the day you break that trust is like the story of Humpty Dumpty. Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall, Humpty Dumpty. All the king's horses couldn't. Exactly. And so when you destroy that level of trust, it can never be the same. The questions will be swirling around. There'll always be a sense of uneasiness. I tell people all the time, when you mess up and you break up your relationship, I tell people all the time, it takes me anywhere from 14 to 16 weeks to help couples get their lives in order so they can prepare themselves for marriage. It takes twice as long after they break up to try and work them through whatever the difficulty is. And most of the times, after finishing 28 weeks of counseling, 32 weeks of counseling, the person will turn around and say to me, well, Father, I only come to see what they were going to say. In other words, they had no intentions of being reconciled with the person whatsoever. And I think we need to be very careful, because in a lot of cases, we're playing with people's minds, with their emotions, with their psychological makeup, and it could come back to bite you later on in life. You understand, everybody? Okay? All right. There's obviously you all laughed over the point about the 10 peg. Okay? That's verse 12. As a thirsty traveler opens his mouth and drinks from any water near him, okay? So she will sit in front of every tent peg and open a quiver to the arrow. Very polite. I can't put it any better than that. Don't ask me. If you would get the imagery.
She's very generous.
A little too generous. Oh God. All right. And all the way through, you see this contrast that is going on between the good wife and the modest wife. The good wife, and the wicked wife. And all this strife is going back and forth between the two of them. The good wife, she's modest, she's charming, she knows how to exercise chastity, she knows how to carry herself, she does very well in terms of making sure that she brings light to a home. Whereas a wicked wife, oh, Jesus help you. Okay? At one point he even says, it's like trying to catch the scorpion. Okay? And if you ever try to catch a scorpion, I can tell you right now, that's a nasty sting you can get. Because that tail will swip out and make sure it hits you hard enough so you never forget it. Everybody straight on that? Any questions with regards to that particular chapter? Let's move on. We're going to move on to Ecclesiasticus chapter 27. What sort of business person you ought to be?
Ecclesiasticus chapter 27, beginning at verse 1. Many have committed sin for gain, and those who seek to get rich will avert their eyes. As a stake is driven firmly in the fissures between stones, so sin is wedged in between selling and buying. If a person is not steadfast in the fear of the Lord, his house will be quickly overthrown. When a seer is shaken and the refuse appear, so the person falls when he speaks. The killing tests the potter's vessel, so the test of a person is in his conversation. Its fruit discloses the cultivation of a tree, so a person's speech discloses the cultivation of his mind. Do not praise anyone before he speaks, for this is the way people are tested. If you pursue justice, you will attain it, and wear it like a glorious robe. Birds roost with their own kind. So honesty comes home to those who practice it. The lion lies in wait for prey, so does sin for evildoers. The conversation of the godly is always wise, but the fool changes like the moon. Among stupid people, limit your time, but amongst thoughtful people, linger on. The talk of fools is offensive, and their laughter is wantonly sinful. Their cursing and swearing makes one ear stand on end, and their quarrels make others stop their ears. The strife of the proud leads to bloodshed, and their abuse is grievous to hear. Whoever betrays secrets between confidence and will never find a conjugal friend. Love your friend and keep faith with him. But if you betray his secret, do not follow after him, for a person destroys his enemies. So you have destroyed the friendship of your neighbor. And as you allow a bird to escape from your hand, so have you let your neighbor go, and will not catch him again. Do not go after him, for he is too far off, and has escaped like a gazelle from a snare. For a wound may be bandaged, and there is reconciliation after abuse. But whoever has betrayed secret is without hope. Whoever winks the eye plots mischief, and those who know him will keep their distance. In your presence, his mouth is all sweetness, and he admires your words. But later, he will twist his speech, and with your own words, he will trip you up. I have hated many things, but him above all, even the Lord hates him. Whoever throws a stone straight up throws it on his own head, and a treacherous blow opens up many wounds. Whoever digs a pit will fall into it, and whoever sets a snare will be caught in it. If a person does evil, it will roll back on him, and he will not know where it came from. Mockery and abuse issues from the crowd, but vengeance lies in wait for them like a lion. Those who rejoice in the fall of the godly will be caught in a snare, and pain will consume them before their death. Anger and wrath, these also are abomination, yet a sinner holds on to them.
You ready? Oh, how hard it is to conduct business and be straight. That's basically what he's saying in the opening verses. It's hard because you want to gain something while you're carrying out business. And the question is, how much you can turn a blind eye to some of the things you do? Let me be careful how I say this. I buy something in the United States for $10. What's that, Mickey? And when I come back to Nassau, I look in the shop and somebody trying to sell it to me for what? 45, 50, 60, 75. In other words, how much percentage you mark it up before you ever get satisfied with what you've taken from poor people who can't afford to make a trip across the way. And so he basically tells us that as a stake is driven between a fish and the rock and the stones, so sin is wedged between selling and buying. It's amazing what happens in terms of how people operate. Okay? And God help you if they know your status in society. Okay? Some of y'all, they know you're professional people. Okay? They know what your job and occupation happen to be. Okay? I gotta be careful when I deal with people in business. I make sure I take off my collar. You know why? Because they believe pastors rich. What? No, I can tell you stories. Not Anglican priest. Oh no. And you got to explain some things to people because they're under the impression that, I tell them all the time, we're not like some other churches where the pastor walk out the church with the collection in hand and leave. We don't operate like that. All right? But it's important for us to understand that there is a sliding scale in this country that is disturbing when people don't realize, yep, you may have to turn a profit because you went, you bought the stuff, you brought it back in, you paid customs. Hopefully you did. She didn't hear that. But that's the reality. Let's face it, people. Okay? You got some people in front of you in the customs line, and they got these huge duffel bags, 6-foot duffel bags, packed to the brim. And they can stand there and tell the customs officer, I only spent $300. Huh? They got their invoice. Oh yeah, they got invoice. They don't get the people in the stores to cook up some false invoice and pass it on to them. And then you wonder why they empty everything out. Okay? Sometimes when I go to my friends in the Caribbean and I have to pass through the United States to get home, when I get to the airport, either in Fort Lauderdale or Miami, they take all my stuff out. And I'm standing up there. And when they finish emptying everything out, I said, "You found what you're looking for?" I told you there were no gifts. There was nothing inside of there. Have a good day, sir. Of course.
Not on your collar?
I had on my collar. Oh yeah, makes no difference. I might as well tell you, if you got a collar on, they treat you worse.
That's why they respect $200.
Okay? And I might as well tell you, there's some people who I've seen do some things at some custom booths that all I can do is burst up with laughter. When I went to Guyana one year, there was this lady who, Forbes Burnham, let me just say this, Forbes Burnham, somebody, when he was on his horse riding in the city, somebody took an apple, a rotten apple, and threw it at him and hit him in his head. And it splat all over him and his horse and over his robe. It says, "Comrades, get your back for that." So he said, "That's it. No more importing of any apples or oranges." Shut down the place. There was a woman who was bringing in a little small box of apples into Guyana. And I never forget this. The woman was standing in front of me and they said, Forbes Burnham made it clear to us that there to be no import of any fruit, any foreign fruit whatsoever. Won't step out. What? And then she tore the box open and she said, "Oh, y'all think y'all can eat my stuff, eh?" And she bit a piece out of every apple. Okay? And all I could do standing behind her was to just burst out with laughter. I felt like falling on the floor and just killing myself with laughter. But she was determined that if she couldn't have her fruits, nobody else got. Okay? And the sad part about it is that we need to recognize the fact that at the end of the day, even when you're conducting business, be fair, be reasonable. Okay? Stop pricing things far out of range when you know that you're gouging it out of your neighbor's eye. Make sure that you pursue justice, that people get what is rightly due to them at the end of the day. Make sure that you understand that he says, your conversation will reveal so much about you. What you say when you open your mouth, how you reason life out. People are going to find out exactly what sort of person you are, and especially the company you're hanging out with. All right? Cursing and swearing ain't going to help you. Okay? At the end of the day, it is important for you to make sure that regardless of whatever takes place, you try to maintain some sense of order and decency with the people around you. For God's sake, don't take advantage of your friends. Don't ill-treat them, because when you lose a good friend, they're gone. So I don't care how much bandage you got. You ain't getting them back. They're gone for good. Be careful about winking your eye. Okay? Don't start winking your eye in here now. All right? And he says to them, in your presence, they can whisper all kind of sweet nothings in your ear. But when the tide turns, you can hate them for what they've done to you. Do not get in the habit of throwing stones up in the air. Okay? What goes up? Come right in your head. All right? If a person does evil, it will roll back right upon him. If you dig a ditch, you can fall in it. Okay? Mockery and abuse, issues from the proud, but vengeance lies in wait for them like a lion. In other words, they're coming back to get you and haunt you later on in life. Anger and wrath, these are an abomination, but yet people still practice them. They still do them, not realizing you're going to pay a price at the end of the day. And so I need to say to you all that it's a whole lesson in how you operate, how you live your life, how you conduct business, how you treat your friends, how you carry yourself in this life. Make sure you're doing it with decency and a certain amount of order at the end of the day. Is he telling us don't conduct business? No, he's not telling us don't conduct business. He says be fair about it. Okay? Don't overdo it. Okay? When Christos and Benny were born, we found out that they were lactose intolerant. And I had to buy, I believe the thing was called Pasobi. They came in these big tins. Okay? I couldn't afford them in Nassau. They were $6 a tin. This is soya milk. And once you open the tin, you either use the whole tin that day, or else you had to throw the rest of it out. You couldn't put it up in the fridge. Okay? So I'd have to go over to Florida, buy cases, and bring them back for them, so that they would have something to drink, put the cereal inside of it, make sure that will settle them down. But the thing about it is, here in Nassau, to buy that here, and I find that when there are specialties inside the Bahamas, we take advantage of other people. Okay? Special need kids. There's a school, I'm not going to call the name of the school, I'm not going to even point direction where it is. School for special need kids. They're charging parents $38,000 a year. Special need kids like Christos, they see that as their bankroll. Of course, if I charge you $38,000 a year and promise you I can teach them, I can educate them, and I can give them therapy. I remember sitting with the Ministry of Education people and telling them straight and plain, you all need to capture these people who are highway robbers. You understand? And so what we do, let me tell you people, I don't know about you all, but it bothers me because it means that there are people in this country who have no scruples. They will do anybody in just for the sake of the mighty God. And we're definitely not supposed to carry on like that. It's now 20 minutes after 7. Yep, and I need to go and get something to eat because today they made a big boo-boo down at the synod. Somebody forgot to order lunch. And I need to go home to get something to eat. Okay? Please save your papers. So we will use these papers for chapter 28, chapter 29, and chapter 30. Well, they did provide food for us. They went to KFC. And they poured the chicken into the containers and put the fries on the side and the corn wrapped up on the other side. And the lady was kind enough to say to me, what would you like to have? Spicy or original? Huh? Take them. That Kyle, the papers that are left over, please take them now and put them down in the bottom drawer where the Pauls and the chalice veils happen to be, so nobody could move them out, because the last day I put them in the sacristy and somebody came and put them out, and the people came on Wednesday and took every last one. Okay? And people, when I get tired like this and hungry, my sight becomes blurred too, so, and I gotta get home tonight. Yes, yes, and I don't want the police to pull me over the side of the road and say, here's the breathalyzer test.
Father, you are 1 o'clock tomorrow.
No, there's no mass 1 o'clock tomorrow. Okay? Let us pray, and we close out for the night. Father in heaven, we thank you for opening our hearts and our minds, not only in terms of Anglicanism, but also in terms of what you've taught us this evening. Move us forward in your beloved kingdom. Help us each day. Lord, this is a difficult road and sometimes a difficult task, but we know with you leading and guiding us, by the power of your Holy Spirit, we will be able to accomplish it. In Jesus' precious name we pray. Have a good evening, everybody. I need to go get something to eat. Okay?